Okay, so we're going to finish off Amelia Bedelia. Thank you, Amelia Bedelia. When we left off, she was stringing the beans. So let's see what happens. See if she still takes things. Jelly roll! Exclaimed Amelia Bedelia. I never heard tell of a jelly rolling. When Amelia Bedelia got out the jar of jelly, Amelia Bedelia tried again and again, but she couldn't get that jelly to roll. See, she's trying to roll it across the floor. Not what they meant. Then Amelia Bedelia washed her hands. She got out her mixing bowl. Amelia Bedelia began to mix a little of this and a pinch of that. Great Aunt Myra, or no Great Aunt Myra, there's not going to be any rolling jelly in this house tonight, said Amelia Bedelia. Mr. and Mrs. Rogers arrived home at the same time. Mrs. Rogers called, Amelia Bedelia, please separate 3 eggs and par the other vegetables you washed. I'll do the cooking. Then she and Mr. Rogers hurried upstairs to dress. Amelia Bedelia took out 3 eggs. I wonder why they need to be separated. They've been together all day and nothing happened. But Amelia Bedelia separated those eggs. Pair the vegetables? Amelia Bedelia laughed. Oh, here you 2 go together, and you 2? Now be careful, or I'll separate you, too. I don't think that's what Mrs. Rogers meant. Mr. Rogers roared. What in tarnation happened to my shirts? Oh, don't you like the big checks? I didn't have time to do little ones. But I will next time, promised Mrs. Bedelia. That's not what she meant. My dress, exclaimed Mrs. Rogers. It's full of holes. Yes, ma'am. I removed every single spot, said Amelia Bedelia. Before Mr. Rogers could say any more, the doorbell rang. Great Aunt Myra, said Mr. and Mrs. Rogers, and they rushed to the front door. Good evening, grandniece. Good evening, grandnephew. My, that trip made me hungry, said Great Aunt Myra. I'll cook dinner right now, said Mrs. Rogers, and she went into the kitchen. Amelia Bedelia, did you string the potatoes, the beans? Asked Mrs. Rogers. Yes, see, they do have a homely look, said Amelia Bedelia. See, she strung them up. Where are the eggs I asked you to separate, said Miss Rogers. Here's one, and one behind the clock, and the other one is over there. Did I separate them far enough? Asked Miss Rogers. Mrs. Rogers said nothing, so Amelia Bedelia went on. I pared the vegetables. They went well together, really well, and there weren't any leftovers. Mrs. Rogers slammed her hand on the table. It hit a sticky blob. Ugh, what is this? She shouted. I really tried to make it roll, but it just plip-plopped all over the place, said Amelia Bedelia. Amelia Bedelia, exclaimed Miss Rogers, how do you get these things so mixed up? Things mixed up? Oh, I plumb forgot, said Amelia Bedelia, and she hurried to the stove. Amelia Bedelia opened the door. Aunt Myra sat up and sniffed. Hot apple pie. Now that's my kind of mixed up things I like. Great Aunt Myra announced, Grandniece, grandnephew, I like it here. Oh, Great Aunt Myra, we're so glad, said Mr. and Mrs. Rogers. And they both began to talk at once. But Great Aunt Myra wasn't much for words. She had her eyes on that last piece of pie. Great Aunt Myra put the last piece of pie in her plate. Then she said, Grandniece, grandnephew, I will visit you often. That Amelia Bedelia really knows how to make a body feel at home. Thank you, Amelia Bedelia. Amelia Bedelia smiled. She and Great Aunt Myra would get along. So Amelia Bedelia doesn't always listen the right way. But in the end, she made a pie and made Aunt Myra feel great. I hope you guys have a great weekend.